Once again, welcome. This session is all about helping you to put those practicalities in place so that you can really successfully complete a digital detox. I'm sure that you have read articles about it and might have even tried to look at a digital detox, but we'll look at some of those practicalities that I help my clients with. Now, those of you who have never heard of me or never seen any of my work, or haven't seen the previous session that I presented a little while ago for We Are the City. My name is Beatrix Schmidt, and I'm a sleep coach, a professional speaker, and the author of the Sleep Deep Method. And one of the reasons I'm presenting this topic to you is because during my work as a sleep coach, working with professionals who struggle with insomnia or other sleep-related problems, this comes up all the time. There is absolutely no question that our technology use is impacting not just maybe our ability to be able to switch off, but also sleeping through the night, and then how we can actually get going in the morning, all the way to affecting our energy levels during the day. And I'm sure if you're in this session, you have started feeling some of those negative effects, or you might have even been sort of struggling with some of those sort of detrimental issues with that technology can cause for a while. And again, one of the other reasons I'm passionate about this particular topic is that technology is staying in our life. It's not going away. So if we can build a better relationship with technology, then we're going to be able to utilize all those different things, either new software, new ways of conducting work, all the way to really taking advantage of what technology can actually help us with. And again, when I work with clients, it's not about you completely ignoring technology for a long period of time. It's really much about the practicalities, the everyday little steps that you can take to build that better relationship, to be able to really detach from either devices or the outcome of what those devices cause. So let's start getting into a little bit of the sort of introduction. And again, I'll start straight away asking you a question. So how does technology impact you? And what I see in my client work is generally there are three ways technology affects us and our overall well-being. One is physical. So this could be maybe eye strain. This could be maybe muscle pain because you might be slouching. Often when we spend a lot of time in using our devices, our posture actually isn't really as great as it could be. So this could be looking at your phone and lowering your head, so you put pressure on your neck. This can cause lots of physical symptoms, pains, aches, even headaches, muscle strain, and eye strain as well. So this is one element, the physical element. Also, another thing that I've seen in terms of this physical element is how our stress responses change. So if you can think about a time when you had maybe a notification come in and you were really focused and that notification almost made you jump, that's a physical response, a stress response that you have had from this use of, or from the technology that you have. So again, look at your life and look at how technology is impacting you negatively when it comes to this physical area. And again, if you're happy to share, you can put it in the chat box, because I'm sure that it would be great for each other to share some of those different things, because sometimes we're just not aware of those things as much. So if you hear it from another person, we're actually connect with that. So feel free to put it in the chat box of how technology use is impacting you physically. The next one is the emotional side. So when we are on our devices, and especially for the last couple of weeks, we have relied on technology to connect with our friends, to connect with our social circles, family members. So it has changed how we emotionally connect with people. Sometimes through messaging, instead of being able to sit across the table, can actually cause conflict, misunderstandings. And again, I'm sure that you have had some of those instances, but maybe something through a different technology use or a different way of communicating has caused some conflict. I've certainly experienced that. And where you're in person, you're really able to discuss those things. During the last couple of weeks, we might not have had that opportunity. So again, look at your life and think how all those different devices that you use is affecting you emotionally. Is it that maybe it's more negative emotions, the frustrations, anger, upset, all those sort of more negative emotions come up? Or is it more on the positive side? So actually, you've been doing really well, and the technology just basically enabled you to communicate differently and maybe even better with your friends and family and even your work colleagues if you're still working. So again, what are those emotional elements that you can see in your life? You can write down both the positive ones and the negative ones, because sometimes actually the positive emotions, those excitement, maybe going on social media late at night and seeing something super exciting, can actually have an effect of how you're then able to rest in the evening, because you're so excited now that your body physically has responded to it as well. So it doesn't just have to be negative, it could be positive emotions as well. And then the last one is very much on the mental side. So how are you able to be focused through the use of technology? And this is where those notifications through different devices come in. Because when we're trying to focus on something and then a notification comes in, our brain will actually look at that notification or take it as an information and distract us. So a lot of the times when I look at the mental impacts of technology use is very much the amounts of distractions that you have that comes from either switching between different devices, or maybe not giving yourself the permission to put them on silent and really be able to focus on the task at hand. So again, look at how devices impact your mental well-being. And again, mental well-being is a big part of our ability to be able to perform at our best. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had Mental Health Awareness Week, and a lot of the topics were around this new way of living. So again, share it in the chat box. What are those sort of mental side and those effects that you have seen that come from technology? And we're all different. Some of us have all these three playing a role in our sort of relationship with technology. Other people, it might be just one or the other. So whatever it is for within your life and within your situation. So I'm just going to look at some of the messages that you have been putting in there. So developing sort of arthritis was mentioned in the chat, and the thumbs getting actually more physically either tired initially or obviously it's impacting. So that's definitely one. The physical elements are there. Binge watching movies, browsing for hours before sleep affects the sleep patterns. And that's definitely something I have seen with client work. And we'll look at the link back to sleep, because obviously I do work with people who have sleep problems. So we'll link that to sleep as well a little bit later. So another one was that a situation can become stressful or frustrating. So again, all those emotions will link back to some of these different situations that we have. So, and the other thing that was mentioned, which is a great point, is now we're linked to technology so much more than maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago. How many of us watch things on Netflix that requires us to use not just our TV, but perhaps maybe watching it on a smartphone or a tablet, because you're sharing the things with your family members and you're in different rooms trying to sort of cater for all those dynamics that can be there with families, for example. So it's definitely has changed the way we live our life through various different devices. Now, before we move on, again, what I would like you to do is make a list of the different devices that you use, because some devices will link to certain things that you're doing. But sometimes what happens is our relationship is not individually just a problem with one, it's that it's the accumulation of all the different things that we have to use. So what are those devices that you use that impact all these different areas of your days? So the first one is normally the smartphone that most people can relate to. But it's not just that. Maybe you have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or any of those sort of wearable devices, which again, I often come across with when I work with clients. Or it could be maybe you're using your iPad to consume something like a book. Or maybe it could be a Kindle that you're using to read a book. Instead of paper version many years ago, we are now sort of transitioning more and more to those kind of devices. Then again, we've got laptops and PCs, or work related. Generally they tend to be more work related when we look at the laptop and the PC. And again, for the last couple of months, how many hours have we spent on our devices? Instead of maybe when you were in the office environment and you would have lunch with someone else, so you would walk away from your laptop or PC. So again, it's really, the last couple of weeks have really impacted this. So those of you who are happy to share, maybe just let me know how many different devices you use. So is it just one, maybe mostly your smartphone? Or is it smartphone, maybe Kindle and laptop? So that would be 3. So how many different devices do you have in your life? So 3, 4, 5, 7, okay. 5, 3, the highest number is 7. So there you go. So far, can we beat 7? Is there anybody who's using more than 7 devices? Okay, I think 7 is the highest. Not that it's a problem. None of this has to become a problem, but it's good to be aware of it. So generally, it normally peaks around 7 because there is only so many we can integrate into our life. So that's really great. So let's move on to the next stage that I wanted to share with you. And this is where we're going into a little bit of the smaller picture, because when we look at the entire 24 hours, we know we're using technology. We know that it potentially is affecting us negatively. But when we start to understand what are those smaller areas of life that it's impacted, it's easier to put the practicalities in place. And again, at the end of the session, I will share a lot of sort of practical tips on this. But for me to be able to help you start building this better relationship, we need to bring the awareness into the picture. Because again, technology use doesn't have to become negative. It's how you're able to build those skills and tools and techniques around your entire 24 hours, not just to help you be more productive through technology, but also be able to switch off from it. And this is where the sleep picture comes in. So the 7 areas that you can see on this slide, and I will walk you through that, so don't worry if you can't quite make out the names, represent the methodology that I work with. So I've developed the Sleep Deep method, which is primarily aimed at helping people to overcome sleep problems and insomnia, but actually it very much relates to any other challenges that we have. Because when we look at all these 7 areas of life, we can really start to pinpoint what are the areas that are most negatively impacted, not just by sleep, but for example, tech use as well. So again, I really want you to look at your example and your days and this relationship with technology. So the first one is physical. We mentioned that earlier. So what are those ways that the devices affect you physically? It could be muscle tension. It could be the strain that I mentioned. It could be that when you go on social media, for example, you tend to breathe faster. Now, sometimes people can't really tell. It requires a little bit of self-monitoring to really figure out whether or not that's something. But physically, how does technology impact you is one. The second one is the emotional, which I also mentioned earlier. So again, what are the emotions that come from your technology use? And again, these are a range of emotions. These are anything from the very negative ones all the way to the very positive ones. The third one is social interactions. So how technology is impacting the way you interact with people. Um, Social media is one of the biggest examples here, because a lot of the times what happens is that we communicate with people through social media instead of maybe actually building a small group of friends or sort of family members who we regularly meet. So often our activities have become more online than offline. It doesn't have to mean that, but again, this is one of the tendencies that I've seen. Then we look at the spiritual side. Now, we all have different beliefs and values, and some of you might be actually sort of following some religion, or all those different beliefs that we have. But when I look at spiritual side, is how you're able to create harmony and peace within your 24 hours. So harmony and peace is a very big part of us being able to really be fulfilled, which is where this technology reliance or maybe even addiction can take quite a bit away from us. So when you look at your life and when you're using technology, how peaceful do you feel? Do you feel like the technology use is adding to your life, or it feels like it's actually turning things a little bit more negative? And so this is where sometimes information overload that we have seen over the last couple of weeks of, obviously the coronavirus and the negative news, that can really impact us in a way of feeling safe and secure. So this is again something that I've seen with the client work in the last couple of weeks. The more clients tend to consume the news and all the information about the current, it definitely challenging time, the more their entire 24 hours have become more negative. And of course, we need to take these things seriously, but it doesn't mean that we have to worry about it to the level where it completely destroys our 24 hours productivity or sleep. So again, have a look at that piece, because I think that was really relevant in the last couple of weeks. Then we move into the intellectual side. This is for those of you who love learning. And this is maybe why you're going onto social media, maybe why you're going to use your devices, is to keep learning, to keep growing yourself. And you probably are here because you want to do that. So this will be some of those patterns that you're going to start seeing with your tech use. If you are wanting to better yourself, a lot of these things are now consumed through technology. But what are those boundaries? At what point are you going to keep leveling up? And potentially that push to keep leveling up is becoming now a negative relationship with this tech use. Often this is what I see late at night when people might not be able to get to sleep, and they're going on social media because, well, if I can't sleep, I might as well do something else. Then we look at the environment. This is where you have probably read articles about exposure to blue light through technology use, especially mobile phones, but also looking at how restful you feel in your environment. And that could be also at work, not just at home, in bed, around sleep. So when you approach your workstation, for example, if you are still working from home, and most of us do, how do you feel? Does that workstation, and even approaching that workstation, is already creating this stress element of, I wonder what I'm going to find there? So that could be an environmental element there. And also the other environmental element is when you look at your bedroom. So how much all the tech use might actually be keeping you away from being able to sleep. And then the last one is occupation, which again I mentioned. But again, one of the things that I really see within this part, especially with technology use, is often we don't even give ourselves permission to put our phones on silent, to maybe disable that automated ping that tells us that an email has come in. Now, I understand that maybe a role that you have in your work requires you to be sort of consistently engaging with incoming things. But I haven't come across anybody who have not been able to have that conversation at work when this sort of constant being connected has become detrimental. Even if it is for half an hour, or even if it is for an hour, most of us within a work environment can really have those conversations where you're able to take some time away from this use of technology within working hours. But sometimes the biggest point here is that we don't actually give ourselves permission to even have that conversation. We just continue on and we just get on with it, and we're just going to do the best we can, because sometimes we don't feel like maybe it's going to be something that we can discuss with the team around us, or even with our managers. So again, have a look at your life and how does all these devices impact the areas of your life. And I just want you to pick the top 2 areas of your life that are most negatively impacted by technology. The reason I'm saying negatively, because of course, if it's positively impacting your life, then it's brilliant. We really want to look at when it's negatively impacting your life, because when we look at digital detox and being able to successfully complete one, it's looking at all those sort of negative things that are going on that's maybe taking away some of our focus or some of that energy from us. So again, if you're happy to share, pick the top 2 area of your life that is negatively impacting your, that comes from technology use negatively impacting that area of your life. And feel free to share. Almost every one of you is probably going to have a different combination of 2. Because remember, we're very different. How one thing affects one person is very different than another person being affected by the same thing. So it's very much about you. So, okay, romance. So that will fit into sort of the social / relationships. Child time, again, anxiety, tension. That's definitely one of the things that I've seen as well. Inability to concentrate, focus, definitely. Partnerships. And this is a great point. Distance from our loved ones or from our partners. So some of the relationship, unfortunately, has had to change in a way that you can't meet as often, or you might actually be living in different places, or maybe even different countries. So it's definitely impacted that. And then again, it could be that it's just mainly physical. So, okay, that's brilliant. I think you're starting to get an understanding of where to begin. Just wanted to check in with you so far. Has this been helpful for you to get a little bit more clarity of how technology is impacting you? And now we're going to be able to start going into how to change that. Awareness always comes first. So I hope so far it has really been able to help you to clarify what are those different things that the technology is causing. So, okay. So the next thing is we link it back to sleep. So, and again, I've started mentioning some of those dynamics that I see in my work as well. When we look at pillars of sleep, when I look at pillars of sleep, which comes from my methodology, I look at 4. And this is where this technology use will come into your life as well. It doesn't have to mean that you actually have a sleep problem, but you're going to start seeing how that area or that pillar is going to be affected by your devices. So the first one is your ability to be able to switch off in the evening. So do you think that your devices are stopping you to be able to get into sleep? And if you're happy to share, again, just put yes, switching off is definitely impacted by technology. It doesn't have to mean that. Sometimes technology can actually help us to sort of facilitate relaxation before bed. So it could actually have a positive effect, but a lot of the times I see the negative effect. So lots of yeses. I think this is one of the major things that I have seen, especially for the last couple of weeks. And yeah, exactly. It was Chantal mentioned as well, especially during lockdown, because it extended the number of hours we spend on the devices. The second one is your ability to be able to sleep through the night. So this is where maybe you're woken up in the middle of the night, not being able to get to sleep. And instead of you choosing to focus on getting back to sleep, maybe you've taken out your mobile phone and, just started browsing because, you felt awake enough to be able to do that. But sometimes what can happen is now you've put a habit in place that is extending your awake hours. And I see this quite often with client work. Of course, sometimes the frustration of not being able to get back to sleep is there, which is why often I see this dynamic is you might be taking your phone or Kindle or iPad or whatever that device might be, is to help you decrease that frustration. But often what happens is you're now put in a habit. So as soon as your body wakes up in the middle of the night, let's say 2-3 o'clock in the morning, the first thing you will think about is, I'm awake, well, might as well do something else. But instead, why not focus on learning tools and techniques to be able to get back into sleep instead of using the devices to keep you awake for longer? So this is just a simple sort of switch. It's not necessarily easy to put it in place, and I've seen that, but it can be put in place, and you can reverse that sort of habit that you have now built. The next one is how you wake up in the morning. So how many of you wake up tired in the morning? And the first thing you might do is you start looking at your devices, maybe checking in with work, maybe checking in with social media. So you don't actually have this transition time from the night into the day. Often we're using our mobile phones as an alarm clock, which in itself is not a problem. Normally the problem area comes from you switching off your alarm and actually start checking things. So how many of you, if you have to share, do that in the morning? The first thing after switching off the alarm is potentially start checking things or looking at all the notifications you might have seen. Could be a text message, could be maybe checking your email, just in case something came through overnight from work. And this is again some of the things that can relate to you if you are maybe dealing with international teams. You almost straight away want to check in with what's happening. So again, yes, checking messages straight away. Now, what I want you to think about here is, again, how is this helping you to ease into the day so that you can perform at your absolute best? Often when you give yourself a 20 to 30 minute time for your body and your mind to ease into the day, you're going to be able to be more productive. You're going to be able to have a better relationship. And better relationship, not just with your technology, but also with yourself. Giving yourself that permission to maybe do something fun or more enjoyable, rather than already getting these notifications, which might put you into a sort of stressful state already. So really look at that. Is what's your relationship with your devices, and especially this tends to be the phone, because now we have phones in our bedrooms and we use it for everything. And I definitely seen this. So when I used to struggle with my sleep initially, I didn't used to have my emails on my phone. So I improved my sleep. And what happened is, as I got my first iPhone, and the emails were on there, and I'm sure you will relate to that as well. Suddenly, it has become kind of exciting to wake up to check what's happening, but over time, it became almost an obligation to check, and this has created that negative cycle. And one of the things that happened with me is, and this shows how powerful the brain is, sometimes for negative ways. I actually replied to a client at the time when I was in a different position. I replied to a client in the middle of the night, and I don't even remember it. Because again, remember, your brain doesn't switch off when you sleep. It's still consuming all that information, noises, the pings that might be there from your phone or the light that come on. It still consumes that information. And we can respond to things just like some people sleepwalk, because our body knows what to do. And I basically replied to a client. And then in the morning, I checked my emails, and this client was like, why did you reply to me that late? And I don't even remember. And it totally made sense. My reply totally made sense. So this is for those of you who maybe in the middle of the night wakes up, but not quite conscious, but you start problem solving. This is again a scenario that I've seen. And then the last one, the fourth pillar, is how you are able to maintain your energy level during the entire day. And this is where those distractions come in. This is where those habits come in that we no longer focus properly. How many of you are almost proud to say that you can multitask, right? Now, again, of course, it's a good idea, but your brain doesn't tend to multitask that well. Whether or not you're, because there's normally a gender question, sometimes people say that, women can multitask better than men, and any of those kind of fun conversations. But actually, most of us can't really multitask that well because it drains your energy, your mental energy. If you do more than one thing, it will still drain your energy quicker than if you just really focus on one thing. So I would invite you to start learning to focus on one thing. And one of the reasons that's actually really powerful is when we come to the evening, again, your body and your mind will learn to focus on one thing and one thing only, which means if you choose to learn to really relax and switch off, it will not look for extra things to deal with. It will just focus on, I am going to sleep, and that's the purpose and that's the focus, instead of, if I can't sleep, maybe I'll just do something else. This is where some of those daily multitasking can affect other areas of our life. So again, turning it over to you, what is the main pillar of your entire 24 hours or sleep that is impacted? Is it switching off mostly? Is it waking up in the middle of the night? And maybe the secondary would be that you wake up tired in the morning, or that you're not able to maintain your energy levels. So these four, sometimes it's more than one. Of course, if you don't get good enough sleep, then you're going to be tired. But generally speaking, there is one that's driving the other problem. So again, there's variation. It could be waking up at the night. Okay, so anxiety was mentioned. Sometimes these sleep problems are caused by something else. And this is where I would like to put in a disclaimer. If you have been struggling with something that is an ongoing problem, seek help. And anxiety is one of those things. Of course, if you are already experiencing those things, it's going to be driving some of those other behaviors. And especially what I've seen with anxiety, if, for example, you're using maybe a device to calm you when you might be going through an anxiety attack, it's actually in a way a positive way for you to deal with that situation. So sometimes when you take away that device, it can actually turn up the anxiety itself. So again, just make sure that you look at your current situation. All of these different things that I'll mention, and I'll go through, we're going into the tips now in a minute, it relates to you. It's really important to choose all those tools and techniques that actually really relates to your personal situation. All of us are different. All of us, as you already seen, have a different combination of challenges, even lockdown, but even after lockdown. So it's important for us to really recognize what are those things that are happening in our life. So let's move on to the next. We'll really look at and just almost wrap up those different types of stressors that come from technology use. So the first one is going to be emotional. Now, in this section, what I want you to do is look at what is the most common emotion. We talked about emotion as a big range, but what is the most common emotion that technology use, or this overload of technology, or this extreme use of technology causes? Is it frustration? Is it that actually maybe you're losing this sense of connection even though we are connected? What is that emotion behind those stresses that you can feel from devices? The next one, as we're going through, it's mapping to the similar things that I mentioned earlier. The next one is the mental one. Again, pinpoint what it is that the negative relationship with technology is doing. Is it that it's causing you mainly focus, so you're not as focused because you're getting notification? Another mental side here is, at the end of the day, you're really mentally exhausted. So it can be that this overload of technology is actually using the exhaustion itself. So it's the mental exhaustion. So these are normally those two different things. And then the third one is the physical. We talked about this again, but just make sure that you pinpoint those physical elements that come from the device use. So we wrap up this section. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the practicalities. So I'm going to be sharing some of the tips and advice that I share with my clients as well. Again, disclaimer here, not everything is going to apply to you. What I want you to do at the end of this session is pick a couple, put them in place, and commit to them. Because if you commit to them, rather than just give it a go for a day, it's more likely that it's going to have an effect on you. And this is where I want to kind of almost give you a warning, because when we change behaviors, often we come to resistance first. And I see that with client work. You know, if we're trying to change our lives and improve our lives, often we first of all come to a resistance of letting go that old habit. So take it into stages. Make sure that you're first of all letting go something before you start overloading your system with all these new ways of living, these new tools like techniques. So one step at a time, basically. I'd rather you take one or two of the things that I'll share with you, put them in place properly before you then start adding on a few more. Because it's going to take a while for you to overcome some of those challenges that these devices use. So again, the writing might be a little bit small, but I'll read out the tips for you. And what I want you to do is make a note so that later you can explore how that might relate to you. Maybe right now it might not relate to you directly, but as you're gonna, after this session, you're gonna think about some of the things we talked about, and it will start making sense maybe, or you'll notice in a week's time, oh, actually, I remember we talked about that, and it will link to the tip itself. So the first part we're gonna look at is the emotional part. So what can you do to really build a better relationship with technology and all your devices that link to more of those emotional challenges that you have? So the first one is talking to someone offline. And when you talk to someone offline, also what I would suggest is away from your bedtime. Because sometimes, and I've had this again, even myself in the past, when I would ring someone really late at night and maybe it turns into something that you end up complaining about, that will have a negative effect of how you feel going into bed. So often it's more important to have these sort of conversations away from bed. So the bed itself stands for sleep and intimacy only. So again, of course, talking to someone could mean that you're using your devices, but maybe instead of a Zoom call, you can just give them a ring. And while you give them a ring, you can go out for a walk. So you're actually not fully embracing technology and maybe cornered because you have to stay in the flat and you have to open your laptop. So this is one of the ways that I start helping clients to transition. Again, once we come out of lockdown fully, we're going to be able to start meeting our friends. So then you can completely detach from technology and completely be present with your friends. But this is a good way to begin. It's really finding a way for you to decrease that amount of tech use that you have so that you're changing the form of communication. The second one is learning to pause and taking a break. And this is where completing a successful digital detox is definitely linking to. A lot of the times I've heard either previous clients or other people going on retreats when you completely and 100% detach from technology for like a weekend. What that does, it doesn't actually help you to change your daily habits, those small little things, those stress responses that you have each and every single day. So I'd rather you take 10 minutes every 2 hours, leave your phone behind, walk away from it, so you can train your body and your mind to actually let go and let go fully. Um, this is very often, even before the lockdown, I have had clients who, when they've taken a break because they had to get up from their desk, they would take their mobile phone, they would go to the bathroom and maybe even do a meditation in the bathroom. So they're still very much attached to the technology. And I definitely wouldn't recommend that you doing a meditation in your bathroom or toilet, because I'm not sure how much of a positive environment you're creating there. I think it's important for us to really embrace, if we do something like meditation, in a way that it can build a very good habit. So think about today for you. How can you integrate maybe a 10-minute break in the afternoon where you get up, you walk away, you don't take your phone with you, and maybe you just sit somewhere else, or you maybe even step outside if you're able to, and just spend a few moments just maybe watching the scenery, maybe watching people walk by if you live near a street, um, and just really being yourself. And this can be a very powerful way to start learning that it's okay to leave your tech behind. It's okay to give yourself that permission to walk away from it. This can be very, very powerful, because what you're doing is you're training your body and your mind to consciously detach from it, because you're choosing to walk away from technology and your devices for yourself, rather than, oh, if it doesn't ping, then I'm taking a break. No, you're actually choosing to walk away from it. It's a very powerful, both visual and physical way of doing that. The next one is communicating clearly with the people around you. Now, where does this come in? This comes in when we get distractions. So whether or not you're now working from home and maybe your family is around you. I know there has been challenges, and definitely for those of you who have children, of trying to communicate with them about, I'm working at the moment, and they trying to get their attention. So it's really building up that communication, so that instead of you getting frustrated at the end, you're ahead and proactively communicating with the people around you that, for the next half an hour, I am going to be focusing on this thing. And with children, what's a great second sort of positive here is you're actually telling and training your children to be able to understand the concept as well. So communicate. Often, even work environments and distractions, you can communicate with your colleagues to say, you know what, between 11 and 11:30, I'm focusing on a particular task and I won't be checking my emails. Or if you don't mind, please don't come and ask me a question. Or I'm putting my phone on silent. This helps you with not only the communication piece, but it also helps you with the focus piece. And the last one, which I see definitely linking to these emotional sort of problems with tech, is experiencing a lot of negative emotions instead of the positive ones. So how can you rebuild that relationship with tech, where instead of it's causing you negative things, it's starting to cause positive things? So let me give you an example. For example, if you're going on social media and it feels like it's actually pulling you in and dragging you in, and you're browsing for hours instead of maybe starting a hobby that you're really passionate about, what you can do is, before you actually go online, you ask yourself, how do I want to feel about this? What feeling do I want to create when I'm actually logging onto, let's say, social media? Now, if you set that intention to begin with, and you set that in motion to begin with, you will recognize when that emotion isn't being created. So then you'll be able to start changing it. Either maybe different friends or different maybe pages, for example, on Facebook, you won't like because it's not actually contributing to that emotional state that you want to achieve. So look at those things. Have these been helpful, these tips? Just put in a yes. I just want to make sure that we're contributing, or I'm contributing. So okay, good. A couple of yeses. Not everything will relate to you, so I completely understand that. We'll move on to the next part. And again, if you've got any questions, keep popping them into the Q&A. We'll go through them. I'm just wrapping up the tip side, and then we'll jump into the questions straight after. So the second part is the mental stress. The first one, which I mentioned earlier, is giving yourself permission to detach from tech, turning off notifications, so that you can proactively choose when you're logging in. You proactively choose and decide that you are going to engage. This will really help with your level of focus, because you're not trying to consume all the different information. You're focusing, and then when you finish your task, you're then consciously choosing to use your tech in a different way. And this can be a very powerful way. For example, in the evening, when you're getting ready for bed, consciously actually putting your phone on airplane mode registers in your head that you have done that action, which means that your brain isn't going to be looking for all those notifications, because you know airplane mode means nothing is going to be coming in. And this is a very simple but very effective way to detach. And again, you can do that during the day, maybe just using airplane mode for a couple of minutes or 15 minutes. I know that sometimes certain situations mean that you can't because you're expected to answer your phone, but there are ways you can create that. Nobody is expected to be connected 100% all the time. And if it is, then maybe it's looking at those sort of responsibilities, and maybe looking at talking to your team about it, because it isn't going to be healthy for you if you're consistently and all the time 100% is connected. The next one, actually, I just mentioned that. So turning off notification and airplane mode. This is a very powerful way. I have used this in my practice so much, and it actually is a very good, very easy thing to start incorporating in your life. And almost every device has some sort of a airplane mode, or if it's a PC or if it's a laptop, you can shut your laptop, that becomes airplane mode. Or, you know, if it's a PC, then you walk away from it, and maybe the screen will go, or the screensaver will come on, but just really detaching from it. The next one is do more fun things that relax you. Often what I see is when we have lots of device use within our 24 hours, we're not doing anything off our devices anymore. Think about hobbies. A lot of the times when I ask professionals who've been struggling with sleep problems or insomnia for a longer period of time, and I ask them about their hobbies, they might spend 2 to 3 hours on social media, or watching a film, or watching a series, but they've actually lost this sense of, what do I really want to do with my time? And if this relates to you, what I would definitely suggest is explore hobbies. Hobbies that don't require you to be online. This can be tricky, but I'll give you a couple of my examples for the last couple of weeks. I actually did a puzzle, a 1,000-piece puzzle, which is definitely not connected to any kind of device use. I was maybe listening to music in the background, but it's definitely a very different dynamic than maybe doing puzzle on your iPad, which I also used to have, but I actually just kind of really stopped doing it. But using that time to really focus on that task off the devices. So again, look at what are those hobbies that you can build up that can take you off of not social media, but devices. It will take you off of having to use your devices to be able to do that hobby. And if you have any trouble doing that, feel free to reach out. I can give you a long list of, or I can suggest a bunch of different things that can become hobbies for you. And also what that helps you with is fulfillment. When we're really excited about a hobby that we really, really enjoy, how much better do we feel? And we are going to make time for it because it matters to us. So it helps with actual commitment to carrying off technology as well. The last one links to all of these is very much training your brain to disconnect. And disconnect and move away from technology. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but I want you to think about it as a training. If your technology use has become negative, you've unconsciously maybe, but you've trained your brain and your body to be okay with that. So you have to now untrain it, have to increase time off of devices for your body and your mind to detach from it. And I literally tell my clients, it is a training. Little steps, little bit of the time, just like if you want to build up your physical strength, you start going to an exercise class. Maybe initially it's hard. This will probably be hard as well, but every day it becomes a little bit easier, and you build up a better relationship with your devices. So really think about it as a training rather than something that you can't do anything about. Of course you can. And then the last piece here is the physical sort of stress elements. So the first one is nourishing your body with food, good food and water, or drinks that are not detrimental. So how many times, maybe sometimes this relates to more office environment, but I've heard it from clients even now. You might have had lunch while you were working, and this might actually be the perfect scenario right now because you're taking the time to watch this session, but you might actually be having lunch at the same time. So thank you. If you are doing that, of course, it's really important for you to feed yourself, but maybe in the future, you can choose not doing it every single day. Sometimes it again becomes an everyday habit that you have lunch at your desk, or you just grab something because you feel like you can't. Scheduling time to physically nourish your body is going to, first of all, help your body with those stress responses, because when you're well nourished, you can handle, and your body can handle a lot more pressure. But when you're forgetting to eat, and maybe you're super hungry by 3 o'clock because you just literally forgotten to eat, that's going to put your body under a lot more pressure as well. So take time to have those things. Often the other thing here as well is when you're working for so many hours during the day, you forget to drink. So have a glass of water. Even for me right now, as you can see, I have a bottle on my desk. I'm not drinking as much because I'm talking to you, but it's always on my desk. And I set a limit of how much do I want to consume. So it's very good to maybe have a bottle that you know how much it is, and then you're setting yourself a target of how many bottles of that water you're going to drink. If you think that water is boring, feel free to put something in it. Sometimes I put lemon in it. Sometimes I actually make tea and let it be cold, and then I drink it. So I've got apple and cinnamon, I've got lemon and ginger. So you can actually make it exciting. It doesn't have to be necessarily boring. But it's really important to nourish our body with that. The next one is learning to breathe properly. When we are using technology, sometimes what can happen is that sort of stress and tense environment creates shallow breathing, or really fast breathing, and you're not even aware of. So when you have that for 7-8 hours during the day, guess what happens? It impacts your ability to be able to sleep pretty well at night as well, because your body is not used to relax. It's fast, the breathing is fast, which is a stress response. This is not necessarily about slowing your breathing down really, but it is about just being aware of how you breathe. So again, what you can do is maybe every 20 or 30 minutes, you just spend 1 minute and just breathe, just focus on your breathing. It doesn't have to be this major task of a 20-minute meditation. The more often you do it, the more often you will again train your body and your mind to make that differentiation between maybe a stress response from devices to a relaxed state. So you're training your body to recognize relaxation, which will help you at night as well. The next one is practice mini exercises. This is where, as you might be working through the day and you don't get up from your desk very much. But even if you just literally do a bit of shoulder circulation, a bit of neck circulation, it breaks that pattern. It breaks that stress response that you might have. When you're using your devices, sometimes what happens is your body goes like this. And when you're checking your phone again, your body can go like this because you're really focusing. What I've seen is people tend to raise their shoulders, slouch a little bit, and lower their head. But if you actually sit up straight, you can still look at your phone without lowering your head. It just means that you have to lift your phone up a little bit more. And these are mini exercises. So it changes the way that you interact with your technology, and it's not going to put as much pressure on your physical body. And the last one, very important one, is diary management and making sure that you include sleep in that diary too. Rather than going through the day and maybe forgetting to get to bed on time because you got sucked into maybe doing something on your devices. And I see that a lot, and especially for the last couple of weeks when we've suddenly had probably more things to deal with, really taking that time out and managing your time better. So really looking at 30-minute, an hour chunks where you can really fully focus. So these are all the tips that I wanted to share with you. I understand that we've come up to 1 o'clock, and those of you